Hey everyone, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at @itchjacino. So today we're going to be talking all about the numbers. The season has ended, so we have all of the numbers, we've compiled them all, and we're going to crunch them and kind of talk about what our expectations were for the season. If we fell short of those, I think we can all probably say that we have. And we'll talk about our lack of goal scoring ability, why that's happening, how we can score more goals, what kind of players we need to bring in order to improve those things, so all of those great things. And I just want to say hello to everybody in the chat box that came early. Wonderful. Barry, hey, how are you? Olivier, oh, Cali Gunners, yay, West Coast. So Newman's here, Jan's here. Thank you guys all for showing up. Smash the like button and let's go ahead and get started. I have Scott from the Arsenal Vision podcast and Crab Stat, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Yeehaw. I don't know if is that still okay to do that here?
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. We let Elliot get away with a lot,
That's true.
So we'll let some things go. But
got to represent the my Western United States kind of vibe going on there with my yeehaws.
I love that. So let everybody know just kind of like what you do, who you are, and all those good things before we go ahead and get started.
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of the stats person, I guess, when you kind of think about for Arsenal. So I do a lot of that for the Arsenal Vision podcast. You'll see my column on Arsblog News to do the by the numbers. Got one of those coming later today, probably looking at the Brighton game, and then I'll have one probably next week, kind of doing an overall numbers when I get some more time to do that. So those are the big things that you'll probably see me around. I like to post fun graphics on Twitter, doing those things. So yeah, that's kind of my jam.
Awesome. So just full disclosure, I've never been like a numbers person, a math person. I only care about those types of things when it comes to Arsenal. I'm really just like not that person, but I enjoy your graphics. It makes it really easy for me to understand what's actually going on. And I love a good heat map. I love that. That's right up my alley. So we're going to use all those good things.
Making those.
So when you make those, is it just like you just make them? Like, how do you make them? Like, just tell me that really quick. Like, is it like a Photoshoppy thing? Like, what is that?
So this one, one of the things that I kind of set out as a goal this season, especially now that Arsenal don't have European football to, interrupt my normal midweek kind of statistics gathering, is that I'm using Python now. So before I was all, Excel, doing those kinds of things, but now I'm trying to learn that. So the heat maps, especially the ones I've been creating lately, those ones are all created through Python. So there's lots of cool packages out there to be able to do that. So you basically take in the raw event data and plug that in, and you're able to find all sorts of cool stuff from that.
I love it. That's super exciting. Like, maybe I'll try it one day. I'm sure it won't come out great, but we'll leave it to you for now. But let's talk about expectations a little bit. I'm sure we can all kind of say that maybe it really depends. It really depends, because what were your expectations of Arsenal this season in terms of where we were going to finish in the table? Like, when the transfer window closed, what did you think was going to happen?
So I think I probably had lower expectations than most people. So I know, especially when, compared to the other people on the Arsenal Vision podcast, I was the guy that probably said that we were most or least likely to make it into the top four of the season. I think when I looked at the team, I thought that on talent level, we were probably like 6th, 7th best. And the way I kind of thought about it is I think about things kind of in tiers. So I thought that Manchester City, Liverpool were kind of that first tier. Before injuries, I think, Liverpool were that way. And I think you could see at the end of the season that Liverpool probably did kind of end up probably closer to that level. And then I thought that there was, Chelsea, Manchester United were kind of in that next kind of spot. I was also higher on Chelsea than I think a lot of people were earlier too. I just didn't think that Lampard was the greatest coach. Now that they have Tuchel, I think that they're going to be probably actually moving up into that next year for next season. And then I thought that there was a lot of teams kind of in that next spot, in that 5th to 8th range. I thought that, Leicester, Tottenham, us, Wolves. Wolves were a team that I didn't expect to do better. So I thought they were going to be fighting in there. And then I thought Everton might have a chance to kind of be in there. So that's kind of where I imagined Arsenal to be in. So that was kind of my general expectation. I think I said about 60 points was where I thought that Arsenal would be. So we ended up just slightly above that. I expected the attack to be a little bit better, the defense to be a little bit worse. So overall, I think that we came pretty close to meeting where I generally expected but I did think that we would be closer to 6th place and not 8th place. But again, it's going to be a matter of a couple points at the end of the year here where we finally ended up in the table. So it's not horribly off of where I expected, but I had low expectations kind of coming in things.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I definitely had lower expectations than other people. And when I was like, I think we'll come between 8th and 10th, people like, how can you be so negative? And I'm like, I'm not actually being negative. It really just depended on, I knew once we didn't get the creative player that would hurt us, because I don't view our players as particularly creative, and they don't score a lot of goals, so seeing how Ozil's output, once it kind of deteriorated towards the end of his kind of tenure at Arsenal, and knowing that we wouldn't have him and there was nobody there to really carry on for him, I was like, that's going to really, really hurt us when we don't have other creative players. At that time, Smith Rowe wasn't even in the team. So I was thinking, yeah, even with Thomas Partey, even with a new defender, 8th is probably where we'll finish. 10th if we really perform badly, and 6th if we overperform. And I think I was pretty close to that. Now, what we've done past that, past we'll talk more about the Boxing Day thing, but once you get a creative player in there and you can connect the defense to the offense, you create more chances and you become more dangerous. So I think starting next season, we may see some better performances and maybe a better return. But at the beginning of the season, I just wasn't seeing it. But let's look at the Premier League table really quick. I always do this and I mess it up. And it always looks weird. So bear with me. Make sure. Let's see.
Yeah, I know we were talking a little bit about what we expected a little bit in the beginning. So I think one of the things that going into the season, I expected a bit of a drop off from Aubameyang, because I know one of the things that really he helped carry the team, I think, a lot further than we expected last year with his finishing. So I didn't expect him to drop off quite as much, but I expected it to come down. And I thought that's where we'd lose some of the attack. And I think that was some of the things that were flattering for us.
Yeah, he was always kind of like overperforming his XG and kind of pulling Harry Kane / Son for us,
Yes.
Just getting every single chance that he got, he scored that, and even if it was like we weren't creating a lot, he was making those chances. And, you can talk about contract when you're in your contract year, they talked about Benteke. This is just like a sidebar. Benteke is in his contract year as well, and he just happens to come back into form. And that's not to say it's some vindictive thing where you're like, I'm just going to perform now. But when you have an extra element of something to work towards, that adrenaline rush can get you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. So it's not really that surprising to me that two players that got bigger contracts in the summer at Arsenal have fallen off past then, and that's Willian and Aubameyang. But let's kind of just look at the table. Like, when I look at this, I'm like, okay, well, really good return for the last 5 games of the season. But that's really in line with the time where we didn't have a lot to play for some of those games. And a lot of the pressure was off. 8th place, I mean, hey, it is what it is. We dodged that European Conference League or Europa Conference League. I think that's a plus. Scott, what do you think? Is that a plus for you or a minus?
I mean, I don't know. I kind of was talking myself into it when it looked like we were about to be into it. So I was, kind of trying to find the silver lining of it. I guess you could say it's a good opportunity to bring in younger players, because I think that's something that the Europa League has kind of helped us with a little bit. It gives you, a few more chances to do those kinds of things. But one of the things that I don't know that we've really taken advantage of with that is that we've played a lot of first-team players in those games, and we've put a lot of minutes on those players when I didn't think that we necessarily had to. So hopefully, if we had gone into a Conference League, maybe it would have been more time for, a Balogun or Aziz or those kinds of players to be able to kind of get in. Some of those guys that are right on the fringes to get them minutes and do those things. I think that would have been a plus, but I think it's also going to be positive to not have to travel on Thursdays over and over again, because I think that's, 8 games probably at a minimum, probably further where Arsenal would probably be one of the favorites if they were in that competition. So it would have been a lot of extra games. And this is going to be another upcoming season where the schedule is going to be incredibly compact, and it's going to be fixtures over and over again. There's not going to be a lot of time to really rest and recover again, because we're going to have a Winter World Cup where that's just going to really throw things off. So it's going to be, it probably won't be full on COVID ball, but it's still going to be a full compressed schedule. So it's probably a blessing to say that we don't have to have that. I guess the other thing that I kind of talked myself into is that, with the revamped Champions League qualification that is supposedly coming, one of the things that, that coefficient number is going to be important to grab. So a season outside of Europe is actually going to hurt Arsenal on that regard. But I think I'll take that trade-off if we can fully concentrate on the league, pick like 15 players to be like our guys that we're going to kind of roll with and, see if we can get 30 plus starts out of, our main guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what I really want to see next season is no distractions and no excuses. Not that, I think Arteta's doing a good job, but there's always been this element of, but he hasn't gotten this. He wasn't able to do this. He'll have his preseason. He won't have the Europa League to disrupt his midweek, training sessions or whatever. And hopefully he has a good transfer window. So this will give us, I think, a more clear idea of where we're actually stand with Arteta. But I look at the table and I think to myself, wow, we just don't score enough goals, 55 goals in comparison to the teams above us. I mean, Chelsea has a pretty bad goal return too. But the difference is that they also keep out goals. We keep out goals, but I think you can kind of look at the way that they play their game, and I think it's a little bit different. But other than that, everybody else kind of scored like 60 something goals or above. We scored 55. And even though I think out of the top 10, we have the least amount of goals against besides Chelsea and Man City, like it just strikes me as like, okay, well, we keep goals out, but we don't score enough goals. And in order for us to get into this 4 to 6 range, we need to figure that out as quickly as possible. So when you look at this and you see that, okay, well, we have a good defense, you can maybe look at it that way. Can we take it as that we have a good defense? We can kind of put that in the win column for this season, that because we only gave away 39 goals, that defensive, Arsenal can't defend narrative can kind of go away? Or do you see it in a different way?
I mean, yeah. So I think one of the things that I saw, especially when Arteta took over last season, is that it really did seem like his first priority was fixing the defense and making sure that they have a solid base to kind of build off of. And I think that makes logical sense. It's giving up goals is, just a bad thing to do. So you want to do that as much as possible. I know we've all kind of grown up in that Arsene Wenger, swashbuckling, just outscore your team, the other team. And that's kind of a fun way to do it. But I think that that's something that has definitely gotten worse over the last few years, was that our defense just wasn't at the level that we needed to be. So I think it made a lot of sense to really kind of focus on that. And a lot of times it's you have to make trade-offs in when you're, kind of picking things. So, sometimes solidifying your defense does come at the cost of your attack. So it's trying to get that right. And I think that's something that I think started to see a little bit better towards the end of the season, is where we weren't stifling the attack quite as much. We were able to kind of have a little bit more of a free-flowing kind of thing. I think that's one of the reasons that Arteta probably didn't really care for Pepe nearly as much as some of us did, and I think that's why he kind of leaned towards Willian, because I think he was a guy that really kind of gives you solidity of structure and really kind of follows the instructions that you want to do. I hated watching him, but I think you could kind of, in a certain sense, it made sense why you were doing it. But I think that, now it's time to, all right, let's, if we have to lose a few of those, goals, if we have to make that trade-off for, scoring an extra 10 goals, I'm okay with that, because I think that's going to be something that leads you to wins. In general, the correlation between goals scored and points is quite high. It's probably better to have more goals scored than, I guess, focusing on defense. I think that at this stage where you are at the top of the table, that's something where your return on scoring more goals is better. Because obviously scoring goals is going to lead you to more wins than draws. So that's one of the things that when you're a solid defensive team, you're going to end up with more draws, especially if you're making that trade-off. So I think that's something when you get to, challenging for the top of the table, it's better to be trying to score more goals, even if it comes at the expense of giving up, maybe a little bit more.
I think that definitely makes sense. And I view Arteta as a risk adverse manager. I just think he doesn't want to throw as many players forward because he knows that we'll be vulnerable. But at the same time, he just has to find that balance. Like you said, he needs to find the balance between, is it worth it? And then when we get down there, we have to be clinical. We can't just be throwing, chances away. And one of the games that we did play where I thought we did take some more risks was against West Ham. I think game state is something that we always have to take into consideration, that they kind of sat off of us. But when we threw more people forward and put teams under pressure, we got reward for it. Of course, we only tied the game. But I think that was one of the first times that I saw Arteta actually try it. And I was like, well, now that he's open to it, we know that that's probably something that he's looking at. He has to look at each game and see if the risk versus reward is worth it. And hopefully next season, if he gets better players, he gets players that he trusts to score the goals when we take the risk, then we'll take more of those risks. And I think it also has something to do with the midfielders that we have and the defenders that we have too. If you have defenders that can cover large areas of space, large patches of green, then you could take more risks. But when you have Rob Holding there, sometimes maybe that's not the smartest thing because he can't really recover once he's beat. So, and we saw Gabriel, he had a lot of that, like yesterday, even against Brighton, where he was able to recover even when he was in bad position. So those things will improve us. But I think overall, defensively, we've improved, but our offense has suffered for it. So that's definitely something that we need to look at.
And I think one of the things that you also kind of think about is at the different game states, when does it make sense to go for things? So I think a lot of times, even like, a tied game state or we're only up by 1 goal, he does definitely kind of retreat back into things a little bit too much. A 1-goal lead is not, so I know the old adage is that, a 2-goal lead is the most dangerous one, but it really isn't. Getting to a 2-goal lead is very important, and that definitely increases your chances of winning quite a bit. So I think one of the things that, this was also a frustration that I had with Emery, is that Arsenal would really kind of focus on creating just a couple big chances kind of a thing. And then, if we missed them, then we were going to kind of settle for a draw instead of kind of just doing overwhelming pressure. Because I think that's when you look at teams like Manchester City or Liverpool, it's just relentless pressure until they score 2 or 3 goals. And then, then maybe they'll take their foot off the gas kind of thing. And I think Arsenal will too often try to create the chances to get 1 goal and then not keep trying to add on. So I think that's something that I'd like to see more of.
100%. You guys, there's about 80 of you guys watching right now. Make sure you like the video and get in the chat box and get into the conversation. I like hearing what you guys have to say, and say hello to Scott. He's new here. Let's be nice to him. Let's have some manners. So let's talk about the big conversation about scoring goals. We can't score goals. I've heard this so many times. Watching the game, we're just feeling like we're not going to score. We're literally not going to score no matter what happens, So kind of was thinking about it a couple of days ago, trying to understand why I feel this way. And because sometimes you just have to kind of watch a couple of games, see what's kind of going on. And I think it's simply we have an inability to get in like those really dangerous positions in the pitch at volume. We don't do it enough. We get there every once in a while, but if you don't do it enough, you don't create that pressure. But just rolling it back a little bit, this season we scored 55 goals. The only top 10 team to score less was Everton with 47. And this was our worst goal tally at home. So we couldn't score goals at home, which is weird. And 43 open play goals. Our XG for open play goals this season was 44.16, which basically tells me that we're clinical when we got the chances, but we didn't get a lot of them. And in the last normal season, which was an Emery season, it was 2018-19. What we kind of said this before was to finish between 4th and 6th, which we did that season. You needed to score about 68 goals. To get 68 goals, we would need to score about 15 more this season than we did. And I just want to kind of ask you, can we just say oh, those are just Aubameyang's goals? When we get Aubameyang scoring, this will even itself out? Or is there an actual, a deeper issue with the way that we play that needs to be addressed?
I think a lot of it was that early in the season, I think that we just didn't have quite the same structure. Because I know one of the things that I went back and kind of looked at is that compared to when we played like that 3-4-3 versus the 4-2-3-1, the difference was pretty big. So I think with the 3-4-3, we were less than 1 goal a game. But when we did switch to the 4-2-3-1, we were at 1.6. So I think that is something that when you get to, 1.6, it's still not quite at the level that we want to be, but it's at least over 60 goals a game. You're just under that 70 mark that we're kind of all shooting for. So I think that's something that if we're able to kind of keep that up, I think we'll be okay. I think the big thing, getting Aubameyang back into his regular spot, being a striker, because I think that's something that too, when he actually played striker, the numbers weren't great, but they were a lot more like Aubameyang. When he was out on that left wing, it just really wasn't working for him. I mean, part of that is the structure wasn't good. Part of it was Aubameyang was just playing badly. And I think that could be a part of the reason why the 3-4-3 didn't work as well too, because we didn't have Aubameyang playing well too. So it's like it kind of goes both directions, I think, in that way. But I think, switching to that 4-2-3-1, getting more from Aubameyang, getting more from our attacking midfielders, who I am very, very excited about for next season. And then if we could actually get some goals from midfield, that would be great to kind of making up some of that gap. Because I think that, especially in that last match, Partey actually kind of showed a little bit of the flashes that he did have at Letty, where he actually can be a decent attacking player from midfield, but he didn't really seem to get in those spots. I don't know if it was an injury thing or directions on, making sure to stay solid. Because that was another thing that I noticed in the last match, is that it really did seem like the first time that we were really committing lots of numbers forward in that match, because we could see our fullbacks, both of them were pushed up the field. And that was something that we didn't see a lot of. Our center backs were almost in the midfield position sometimes. And so I think that's something that we need to be able to do, is kind of just push teams back, be able to find those spaces. And I think you did talk a little bit about, being able to take advantage of high quality spots. And I think we did fairly good at that. And when you kind of look at our touch maps, they're pretty good. One of the things that I think we really kind of hurt ourselves in is that we didn't get into a lot of good medium quality chances. The ones that, will turn into a 10 to 15% chance. Those are the situations where Arsenal just didn't get a lot of. And those ones, maybe not be the greatest chances, but if you take 2 or 3 of those a game, that's going to turn into a goal every, 3 games. And that's something that's very important. So yes, it's important to get the big chances, but it's also important to get some of the medium quality chances, because that's ones where if you're able to get those, you're going to really start putting, pull teams out towards those spots. And I think that's something that we need to try to do better at.
So when you say that, are you kind of, so is that kind of connected to Arsenal wanting to score that perfect goal in that high chance kind of area only, instead of taking shots from other places in the in and around the box too? Because we're always kind of talking about how we want to score like the perfect goal, and most of our goals are kind of like those really nice perfect goals, but they come few and far between. Can we maybe score another couple messy goals somewhere else? Maybe try something else? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
I think so, because a lot of times it really does feel like a lot of our attacking play is incredibly orchestrated and practiced and structured. It's those triangles out on the wide side, trying to work the ball into the deep wide areas of the box. So the stuff that's just outside of like the 6-yard box, but in the wide spots, to get that spot and then do a pass, either across the goal or to a pullback kind of a thing. And those are great chances. Those ones turn into a goal a lot of times. But I think the other things that we need to do is become a little bit less predictable, be able to find some spots. So when I say kind of the medium quality ones, so those ones are not inside of the penalty spot. So the way I kind of think of it, the shots in prime, that's a semicircle that goes across or that goes to like the penalty area, or so to the penalty box. So it's within 12 yards. Those are the ones where you're going to score the majority of your goals. But if you find stuff that's central and a little bit further outside, so basically from the the top of the D in, those are the ones where I think Arsenal are able to get a few more chances in those zones. I think that's something that will help open up other space, because right now it really does seem like we're allergic to getting into those spots where we don't really focus on that and getting those spots.
Perfect. We'll show some of your graphics in just a second, but that's just so interesting, because when I was rewatching the game yesterday, I just felt like we were always taking too long to maybe cross the ball or get the cutback. And maybe it's not we're taking too long. Maybe it's just we're so predictable. Maybe they just know it's coming. So regardless, it seemed like we were just always, every single cross got blocked, every single cross back or whatever. Whenever Emil Smith-Rowe got there, he would just hit it and it would hit the defender and go out for a corner. And I'm like, well, I was like, maybe he could just hit it quicker. Maybe he actually didn't need to hit it quicker. Maybe it's just they already knew it was going to happen. So if we did something different, rotated the ball a little bit different, or he maybe took a shot instead of trying to get to the byline, maybe that would, like you said, draw the defender out and do something different. So good point. That's a really good point, because I was just thinking, why can't he just cross it quicker, but maybe it's not that. Maybe it's not that.
Yeah, getting to those spots is great, but yeah, it's, you can't do the same thing over and over again, especially at this level. They're professionals too, so yeah, they can definitely figure out how you're going to attack them. So you have to have a couple different options.
Perfect. Okay, so let me go ahead and just share my screen again. So of course it's gonna look funky because I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, here we go. Can you see that now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so you can explain these kind of to me a little bit and to everybody who's watching, but this is Arsenal's progressive pass heat map. So Scott, can you explain what this kind of is showing us here?
Yeah, so a progressive pass is one that advances the team at least 10 yards further up the pitch, closer to goal, or is a pass into the box. So this is where the passes actually happen. So you can kind of see in this one where Arsenal like to make their progressive passes, and this is the one that I say this is where Granit Xhaka stands, because you can definitely see that it's that left half space in the midfield. That's where Granit Xhaka likes to operate from, and I think that's something that we need to be able to get more balance in the team from. So I think we can be able to do both. The other one that is frustrating, and I think this is something that watching Arsene Wenger play, we didn't really use that zone 14 much in this. And that's one of the most dangerous spots on the pitch. So that's right above the D, in that area where if you're able to get into that space, it's one of those, you have the full 360 degrees of where you can actually go with the ball. And that's something that if you're able to get possession into that, you're able to really kind of cause chaos and danger from there. So I think if we're looking at where we want to be, I think that's something that we'd like to see. And then I look at kind of the people that we are rumored to be after, and I see that one that's right to the right of that. So I think that's right where your cursor is there. And I think that's something that we could use a lot more of to be able to give us balance, to be able to have a number 10 who likes to operate in that spot, because you see an Odegaard, or you see a Buendia, or even a War. Both of those guys like to kind of operate in that zone and to be able to kind of cook from there. So I think that's something that we kind of see, all right, we aren't using that spot nearly as much as we could have. And I think that's something that, Arsenal are kind of identifying as well as a place that we can get better from.
Yeah, for sure. When I kind of look at this, I do see this big area right here, and this is definitely Granit Xhaka. We know that that's where he likes to chill out. But right here in the center section, I think is where, we need somebody operating in this area here. And I think this might be where we're lacking. I know that if you play Odegaard, he's going to have more of the space. And when we show his heat map, he'll be out here on this right-hand side. But I think we lack centrality. And when you have somebody like Granit Xhaka here, Thomas Partey here, Odegaard here, all of this space is not being utilized. And this is that danger area where you're going to get more penalties. You're going to get more, fouls against. You're going to get all those things because this is the danger area. And we really, really avoid it. So that's definitely something that we can look at.
Yeah. But real quick, if you go back. So one of the things you can also kind of see is the effect of Tierney versus whatever we had on the right back side, where there really isn't anything. So Tierney was so good at getting that ball into the deep final third, where our right back often would be in the same attacking midfielder zones. So I think that's something that I got frustrated with Hector Bellerin, is he would operate in those zones. And I just don't think that was his strength, because I think you look back at when he was at his best, like the 17-18 season, it was a lot more operating similar to how Tierney did. So, doing the overlaps, getting the ball deep and then crossing. So I think that's something that if we're going to go with a new fullback, that's something that would like to see. And I think that's something that Callum Chambers has actually been able to do a lot better. I think it's something that helps whoever is our right attacking midfielder to be able to operate more on the inside where they're more dangerous, instead of being a guy who is providing width. I think leave that to the fullback to do, and then, kind of be able to get them into more dangerous locations.
Exactly. So you sent me something else as well. You sent me the Arsenal progressive passes received heat map. So what are we looking at here?
So this is where the passes are actually received. So you can definitely see again that I like to think of that wide penalty area zone, especially on that left-hand side. That's the space that both Tierney and Smith Rowe really like to go into, and that's something that where we're able to, when we get that ball into there, that's where we do those crosses across the goal. But then we are really good at getting the ball into the penalty area, one of the ones that I actually found kind of interesting is that there's a kind of a dot that's just a little bit further back in that one. So that one is, again, probably more of a Smith Rowe area as well, but we don't have a corresponding side on the right. And I think that's something where it's almost a void where we really need someone there to be able to also receive the ball. So I think that's something that I actually found pretty interesting, is that we don't have the matching threat on the right-hand side.
I think that's a common theme with us, is we know how lopsided we are. We're very left side biased. Everything goes down that left-handed side. So everything about what we do on the right-hand side needs to be addressed. Everything from the right-sided center back to the right back and the right winger, and what kind of 10 we bring in also will change that. Because when we look at the heat maps from yesterday with Odegaard and Pepe, I think that tells a really interesting story about how they, to me, don't work well together, and how Odegaard may not be the right guy based on that alone. So let's look at that really quick. You see, I sent it to myself. So this is Odegaard's heat map from yesterday, right?
Yep.
So, first of all, yesterday when we watched the game, I was very frustrated with Odegaard and Pepe. I think they both played well, but I saw those same things that I was seeing when Ozil was playing in that position when Pepe was there, that they're crashing into each other and they're not helping each other progress the ball. So they pass to each other, and each one of them is trying to cut it back onto their left, cut it back onto their left, cut it back onto their left. And when you have that, you don't have the ability to just get it down to the byline and do a quick cutback. And so they were crashing into each other. They weren't really creating nice, neat triangles with Callum Chambers. And it just left me feeling like I wanted Smith Rowe on that side. I wanted Smith Rowe on the left and Smith Rowe on the right, but we couldn't have that. So for me, if Pepe is going to be in this area as well, and actually in this game, he was a little bit further out, we need Pepe closer to the goal. And if Odegaard is operating in this spot, I just don't really understand why we would play the two of them, and why we would bring in Odegaard to crash into Nicola Pepe when this is he gets us goals in this position. So why do we need Odegaard there?
That's interesting. So, yeah, because I thought that they weren't that bad. I didn't notice too much, but I haven't done a rewatch of the match yet to kind of do it more from an analytical eye without switching between games. Yeah, because I was a little too focused sometimes on the other things that were going on in the Championship Sunday yesterday. So I think that is a pretty interesting point. But yeah, so I mean, I liked the way Odegaard played yesterday, and I think that's something that I was okay with, in the sense that he's going to be our high touch player, and I'd rather Pepe be a little bit more peripheral and just focus on getting into dangerous zones. Because I think the way that I kind of like to see the setup or think about the setup is not necessarily as a 4-2-3-1, but more as almost a 4-2-2-2. So I think of, we have our two central midfielders that are kind of giving support. And then we have kind of the two almost attacking midfielders. So that would be, the Smith Rowe and Odegaard, and then almost two forwards kind of playing in the channels. That's kind of the way that I like the way that we've been doing. So, I liked that Smith Rowe was able to kind of do a little bit of both. I think Odegaard can almost drop a little bit more into midfield to kind of support when we have that. So I think, to me, that was okay. Maybe Pepe was running into those zones a little too much, and he should have been more focused on getting forward. Because, yeah, I would have liked to see his zone maybe an extra 5 yards forward. I think that would have made things look a little bit better, and them not bumping into each other quite as much.
Yeah. I think it just depends on how you kind of see it, because I think we see it a little bit differently. I prefer my 10, or the person that's going to be creating the chances, to operate in this area here, and just leave these areas over here, and even these areas on the side and right here where Smith Rowe would normally operate, and where I'd like Pepe to be, because this area is vacant. And all I could really see was Pepe and Odegaard passing to each other, and each of them trying to get onto their left foot. And if Smith Rowe is here, it's not an issue, because Smith Rowe can use his right. He can overlap Nicola Pepe and cross the ball back in here. But when you have both of them trying to cut it back onto the left, it's a little bit redundant. And I just prefer either the right back or the 10 to have a right foot and be able to cross it in, because two lefties on the right side, to me, is just super redundant. But besides that aspect of it, for you, what are
And I
your
think that's one of the things
go
that
ahead.
actually you can say that I think Saka almost works better with Odegaard in that sense, because although he, also is left-footed, he isn't so left-footed, not like a
Mhm.
Pepe where, I think Pepe's gotten better with his right foot, as, he scored a great goal with his right foot in this match. But I think that's one of the things too, is that he's not so one-dimensional. I'm only going to cut it on my left hand or my left foot and really trying to do that. And I think, that is something that Saka's strength is, that he is almost more two-footed and is willing to go down and cut onto the right. And so I think that's something that makes him so versatile and so important, is that he's able to do both. So I think that if, it is kind of a mix and match situation, where I think that's part of the reason I'm kind of excited about the attacking midfielders. I think that you can kind of pick the way that you want to attack your opponent. And I think that's something that, I really do want to see those guys, pick three of them, and then, whoever you don't pick, two of those guys are going to come in at 60 minutes, and then we're going to be, looking good. So I am just very excited about the attacking midfield talent that we have.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely excited about Smith Rowe and Bukayo Saka. I think they're going to improve so much. They've already improved so much already. But I guess David Ornstein this morning had kind of talked about how Odegaard is our number one target for that creative midfield position over the summer. For you, is he the guy that you would want to go for? I mean, if you have to pay 50 million for Odegaard based on what you've seen, is that like a home run for you, or do you think we need to look in another direction?
I mean, I think like everything, it depends on the price. So if it's 50 million, I'm probably looking in other places. If it's closer to 35, I think that's something that you absolutely take. Anything above that, you're probably really kind of there weighing the options. What does a Buendia cost? What does an Awar cost? And kind of really kind of figuring out which one is the best there. So I think that if it's 35, I'm very happy. At 40, that's kind of my, I don't know, range. So that's kind of where I kind of come down on. I think one of the things too, it's a little bit harder. So I think Odegaard, his first probably like 3-4 matches, I think he was really good. He got injured, and then it took him a while to kind of get back to form. But I think this match was his first one that he really did finally look healthy after that ankle injury. And I think he was able to show a little bit more of what he can do. I think this does show us too that I don't think he's a right 8. I think he is definitely an attacking midfielder. I think he plays at that number 10 a lot better. So I think that's something that depends on how Arsenal want to play next season. If we're going to go with a 4-3-3, I don't think Odegaard is the right choice to go with. I think you could probably find someone better. If we're going to go with a 4-3-3, I'd really like to go all in on Awar, because I think that's something that maximizes him. But if we're going to stick with the 4-2-3-1, I'd probably choose between Odegaard and Buendia. So I think that's really something that we really kind of need to kind of come down to, is what's the identity that we want to have for next season, and then really kind of make sure that the players that we have fit that. Because I think that's something that's also been frustrating with our squad building, is that a lot of the choices don't really seem to be made with an eye towards how we actually want to see the team function.
100%. 100%. There's about 83 of you guys watching. Make sure you like the video. And now we're going to go ahead and look at some of the other choices. And actually, before we look at Buendia, Awa, and Basuma, what are your thoughts on Willock? There's questions in the comments about, can Willock fill that position? We spoke about goals from midfield. He would seem to tick all the boxes, but just a couple of months ago, he didn't tick any of the boxes and we sent him away. So what are your thoughts on Willock, and whether we should keep him or sell him, and those types of things?
It's a really hard question. And I think I kind of come down to it is that I don't know if he will fit the style of play that Arsenal want to have. I mean, I find him very valuable with the goals scored, because one of the things that I really like to talk about is that you want to have someone with an elite skill. That's really kind of what you can kind of lean into, because there's a lot of guys that are average, a lot of things they're good, but that doesn't really move the needle. So you can have a Mohamed El Neni who is a good all-around player, but he's not really good at any one thing. I guess you could say the one thing he's good at is always completing his sideways and backwards passes, and that's fine, but that doesn't really change you from a mid-table team to a team that's challenging for top 4 or even a title, because I think that's where we ultimately want to get to. What gets you into those spots are elite skills at certain things, and then you can kind of cover for some of the weaknesses and really try to maximize the best parts of your team. So I think that's something that Joe Willock does have that, So that's something that I wouldn't be averse for him keeping, but I do worry about how he would actually fit within Arteta's system. So I think that you saw kind of in the Europa League, he was able to be more of a free 8, 10-ish. So he's not really a true 10 because I don't think he finds space for completing passes to him, but he has a great knack for finding space to get shots. So it's kind of a weird thing in that sense. But then I look at how he's done at Newcastle, and one of the things that I think works well for him is that he doesn't have the responsibility to build play. They play more of a counter-attacking, get the ball forward, and then kind of just let chaos go. And so they have St. Maximum, who is kind of the guy that the defense kind of keys off of, and then he's able to kind of play off of that. And I think that really works well for him. So I think that's something that it's not necessarily a failure for either him or Arsenal to say that he doesn't fit with the style that we want to play. I think if he went to, say like a West Ham, I think that he could do amazing there. And I think that's someone that West Ham might challenge with Arsenal next season. So it's not that he can't play at this level. I just don't know if he would necessarily fit with the style of play that Arsenal are going to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I just
give up on him. I mean, unless somebody comes with a lot of money, I don't think I would sell him. So, I mean, if somebody comes with like, I don't know the exact number I'd say, but 25, 30 million, that's probably where I would draw the line and say, maybe you got to really kind of consider that, because that could go towards something else in the team. But if somebody is 15, that's like, no. I mean, yeah, I don't see his value really dropping. But if somebody comes at 30, that's all right. Thank you, Joe. You did great. I wish you the best.
Yeah, I struggle to see where he would fit in the team. And I just always think, like, if he didn't score those goals, would I want him in the team? Probably not. So we have to always take into consideration, like, what he was like when he was actually at Arsenal.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at who would you take out of the team yesterday to fit him in there?
Exactly.
He's not going to. Yeah, I don't see him being a partner for Partey. He doesn't have enough passing there.
Defensive awareness is not good either.
I don't see him as the right midfield, the right attacking midfielder. I don't know if he maybe that would be the one spot that maybe you kind of put him in, because you kind of think about how Aaron Ramsey played that role back in the day. That's kind of maybe the way that he would do it. So that would maybe be the spot. But is he better than Pepe, a better option? I don't know. I mean, so yeah. I mean, and the other thing too is, like, is he going to be okay being a sub? Like, because that would kind of be his role. I think he would be a guy that comes on for the last 20 minutes of games kind of thing. And, maybe that's not what he wants. Maybe he wants to go and try to be a starter somewhere, and that's totally fine. And I wouldn't fault him for doing that either.
I wouldn't either. 100%. So let's move on to some of the other guys that we've been talking about. So do this one more time. Share that thing. All right. So let's go back. Oh, let's talk about this really quick, just before. So tell me what I'm looking at here.
So my passing value added metric. So this is very similar to if anybody's ever seen things like possession value, or, I think StatsBomb's one is going to be offensive value, or some those kinds of things. So this basically looks at the probability added for goal scoring with passing. So this is where Arsenal are actually able to create that with their passing from open play. So you can definitely see that Arsenal definitely attack through the wide channels as our main prior ways of actually creating, which is pretty different than a lot of teams. A lot of teams are a lot more central, and especially from the areas around the outside of the box. So those are one of the things that you can definitely see what Arsenal want to do. And it's almost kind of a continuation of the Emery era, but not quite to the same extreme of, cutback FC that Arsenal had become. So yeah, it's something that we're seeing a lot of with Arsenal, is getting to that spot. And those are spots that actually both Smith Rowe and Tierney both excel at. So I think if we're actually able to get something similar on the right, someone who can create cutbacks there with our fullback being able to do something like that. And then I think if we're able to get more from, a true dedicated playmaker in the spots beyond the 18-yard box, those are the key areas that I think that if we're looking at where we want to get those extra 15 goals from, it's being able to create from those locations.
Look at that box right there. That white box. That is so us right there.
You can imagine
right there.
how we created this. So that's a Tierney diagonal run with a Xhaka kind of little through ball in there. That's a play that we've seen
We
so
love
many
that.
times, or you see Smith Rowe kind of combining with Tierney, and they do that little triangle there on the outside side that we've practiced so much. And yeah, so it's just, let's get that on the right hand side. Let's get a little bit more creativity behind the box, and yeah, really kind of look at what we can do.
Yeah, for sure. Finding that balance is going to be our thing next season. But you had sent me some of, what do you call these? The slices?
Yeah, so they're kind of the
Correct?
slices. So yeah, this one's very similar to there was the slices, football slices, .com, I think was where these ones
Mhm.
are. So these ones definitely come with that inspiration of how team or players look. So we're looking at Bissouma right here. And one of the things that really kind of that I like about Bissouma, and actually that I was very impressed with yesterday, is that just his defensive ability is just off the chart. That's something that he is just so good at. And I think that if you had one kind of thing that he doesn't do, it's probably the ball progression. But I look at this and I think that's something that if we're able to kind of maybe take some of that pressure off of Party, I think that that's something that he could do a lot more of.
Mhm.
And I think that's actually been one of the kind of the frustrations that I've had with Party this season, is that I feel like he's kind of deferred to Xhaka in that a little bit too much, because I think that's something that when he was playing almost as that sole midfielder, and that was so unfair to him. But I think that you could see that he has the ability to do those things, to be able to progress the ball. To one of the things that I think he is so good at is just to be able to, that little touch to evade pressure and then move the ball upfield. I know you always talk, or whenever you're listening to like Clive talk, one of the things that always he does is that, it comes out as a V, and it's just so good. The ball comes to him and it's out the other side to an open person. So I'd like to be able to see being able to take more advantage of that. And I think that Bissouma partnering him would be something that would really kind of work well. Be able to kind of, between them, we'd have a great shield for our back. So I don't think we would really be losing too much in the trade-off for defense. I think we'd be able to maximize Party's ball progression more. And I don't think that Bissouma would be a negative in that sense, that he can't be a secondary ball progressor. But I think that it's one of those things I think we need to move beyond Granit Xhaka, or to make him kind of the third choice going next year, and really kind of move and get more athleticism, I guess, in our midfield, because I think that's one of the things that is really hard to cover for with Granit Xhaka.
The thing about Bissouma, I think it's kind of at Brighton, he has a very specific job to sit in front of the defensive line and protect. But when he played at Lille, he actually he played more progressive. He played more of a box to box role. So he does have that in his locker. He's actually he's more well-rounded than I think people give him credit for, but that's more about what he's being asked to do in his team versus, what his actual skill sets are. So I'm not surprised to see that his ball recoveries are off the chart. We saw that yesterday. And just like you said, having somebody like Bissouma standing next to Thomas Partey will allow Thomas to push up a little bit more and be more of a threat going forward and progress the ball the way that I think a lot of people want to see from him. Like you said, those progressive runs where he just nicks it past the player and runs. And Bissouma would allow us to do that. And then if for some reason Thomas was unable to play, we wouldn't lose all of our running power in the midfield. And I think that that's important for me, because if Thomas is not there, we can't just be reverting back to, sitting right in front of the back line because we're afraid to move. But he does. I know that a lot of people have been asking about, this section here. He's not really a threat, a goal threat. He's not really going to get us assists. But when you have a player like this who can help you recover the ball, one of my biggest issues with Arsenal is that it takes us too long to attack again. A lot of times when the other team gets the ball, we're unable to win the ball back quick enough and go back to try to attack. So having somebody that could help us recover the ball with Thomas Partey would allow us to have more chances to attack. So for me, I think I prefer to see Arsenal be a little bit more aggressive in midfield, win the ball back, and then give it to Smith Rowe, give it to Saka, give it to Pepe, and create more chances that way. Whereas I think some other people would want to see a more progressive 8 there to try to have more offensive players out there on the pitch. How do you kind of see it for you, Scott?
So I think one of the other things to kind of think of is that it's very much a linked kind of sport. So every player kind of deals with, everybody's roles kind of interchange and work together. So I think if you have a person like Bissouma, maybe you need less coverage from your fullbacks. You're able to push them a little bit further up the field, especially if you have Partey and Bissouma together. So I think that's a midfield that, you don't necessarily need a third person holding back, so you can commit more resources forward. You don't need necessarily one of your attacking midfielders to come back and help move the ball upfield, or you're a little bit less worried about being countered as quickly. So, because if you have Granit Xhaka there, you need to have somebody else kind of there next to them to be able to provide the coverage for him, because he's not going to win a foot race. And that's just, a fact of life with him. I mean, he has a lot of great skills, but, ball speed over 10 yards is not one of them. So I think that's something that, if you have a Bissouma there, that's something that will be very important. I think this also goes to the question of how do Arsenal want to play? So if it's a 4-3-3, you could have Bissouma as the 6, and then you could have 2 8s in front of him. I think Partey could do excellent as kind of a box-to-box 8. And then you have maybe even another 8 there that's more of attacking. Is it a Smith Rowe, or is it, someone else that you bring in, a War or something like that? And I think that would be a very good thing. And I think the Bissouma can be in a double pivot as well. So I think that this is something that I would just really like to see. And I think that you look at the depth chart in midfield, and that this is just crying out for someone with these kinds of skills, someone who's, not necessarily an improvement over Xhaka, because he does different things. And I think that you would actually look at Partey taking more of the Xhaka role, and a Bissouma taking maybe kind of the role that a lot of times fell onto El Neni, or, actually a Partey a lot this year too, where he was kind of the shield to where the other guy was the guy that is doing the ball progression. And I think that I would rather see Partey move into that ball progression role, where he is the main man. He's the guy that we have dedicated all of our resources towards at the prime of his career. And let's go maximize him, because he is the guy that we have picked out to say he's the guy that we want to build around. So let's actually build around him to maximize him.
I know some people think I'm crazy, but I know Thomas Partey can play as a progressive 8. I know he can.
I totally
I
agree
know what
with
his
that.
skills are.
You've seen him kind of like match up against other players, and he has that in his locker. Like just the way that he does kind of the quick one touch, evade pressure, and then the ball is always just so fast out of his feet. And that's something that I absolutely love, because that's something with Xhaka is like, man, that guy can pick a pass if you give him time and space, but you don't always have time and space in midfield. So you need someone who's able to really kind of do something fast and be able to really kind of help. And I think that's where, the Premier League is going, is those quick transitions, being able to get our attacking midfielders attacking an unset defense. So that's something that I'm excited to be able to see.
Now, if you guys remember when we did, I think it was my seller keep, and I did my transfers in for that podcast, Awa was on mine with Thomas and Bissouma in the midfield with him. I know it looked weird, and you guys were probably asking where the goals were going to come from, but the goals were going to come from our front 3, because if you have those 3 guys in your midfield, you're winning the midfield battle, because you have Thomas Partey and Awa who can progress the ball like nothing I've seen before. This guy, the ball is stuck to his foot. Like, the ball is stuck to his foot. He's really good at dribbling. He can pass as well. And I'll let Scott describe the attacking numbers there, but look at the guy's numbers. If you had to summarize Awa's skill sets and what he's really good at, what would you say, Scott, based on this slice graph?
I mean, to me, I'm an attacking midfielder who gives you enough midfielder-y kind of things to be able to actually play as midfielder. So one of the things that is kind of interesting about him is that when he's actually been pushed further up the field, his numbers really haven't improved. He actually does a little bit less on the defensive side, but he doesn't get you any more shots or really any more key passes. I mean, I think his best position is as kind of an 8. I don't think he's really kind of played well as a 10 or even as a wide attacking midfielder. So he is a midfielder. He needs support as a midfielder, so he would have to be part of a 3. I think it would be a real stretch to try to play him in a double pivot. And I think that's something that, you kind of look at some of these other numbers where he's going to turn the ball over way too much if he's by himself or with somebody else, or if he's not going to be necessarily a shield. He's not going to give you a lot in the defensive side. He gives enough. Sure. It's not going to be a lot, but he's not a complete, matador kind of, all right, I'll just go right past me kind of player. But one of the things, so if you are going to play a 4-3-3, you do need to be able to get offensive production from your eights. And that's something that I think that he would absolutely excel at. I think his shot numbers were, I can actually pull it up. I think it was like over 2 open play shots per 90. And it's like, that's just good, because I think right now Arsenal were at like 1 shot per 90 from their midfield. So that would be, whoever was playing there. It's just, it wasn't enough. So that's something that Aouar could definitely give you.
Yeah, for sure. When I've watched him play, I just think that he's your third midfielder. I think you have to have Thomas and you have to have like a Basuma in there with him, like you said. But what he gives you is the ability to progress the ball from deep. And also he likes to play off of that left-hand side. For me, I think as much as we want to improve the right-hand side, I think Pepe and Saka are perfectly fine on those sides. But I think having a left-sided midfielder that can play out on the touchline and a little bit more inside, can get into the offensive third, but also progress deep. You have so much more flexibility than if you just have a Granit Xhaka there. So for me, I like the guy, and I think he would be more of like I know it would be kind of like a punt, because there's not a lot of hype around him right now. I mean, he's viewed as a flop for this season, but for me, it's just more because, I mean, when you're linked with a move away and it falls through the way that it fell through, it could throw you off. And they had already replaced him with Paqueta. And so now they're willing to get rid of him for a lower price. So this could be a steal of the season or the steal of the summer for me. And I think he would be the perfect balance in a midfield 3 if that's what we wanted to do and move away from the 10. For me personally, just my personal taste, I'd like us to move away from the 10 because this would give us more flexibility. But hey, that's just me. But I like the guy. I
think it really does come down to what is the identity of Arsenal, because then you go pick the players that fit the identity that you want to do, instead of kind of having a mix and match of like nobody really kind of fits together well. So I think that's something that you need Edu and Arteta to really kind of come through, and what is the identity of what we want to see next year.
Exactly. And I saw there was a question in the comment section. Somebody was asking about how is this better than ESR or Odegaard? And I don't think it's not always about it being better. It's about, like you said, does it fit? Does it make sense? And Odegaard for me is a great player, but does he give us what we need in terms of assists and shots and things like that? Probably not. Is he good on the ball? Is he easy on the eye? Yes. I think Aouar offers you more shots. He offers you more, expected assists and things like that. So I think it just depends on how you view the team. And is it better than ESR? Not necessarily. He's older and, maybe he has a little bit more experience under his belt, but we can't just play with ESR and Saka. They need rest and they need to be able to rotate. So I think this would be a really good option. But go ahead, Scott. And then
I was just say, I mean, I think ESR could actually do a lot of that role. I mean, if we wanted to go for a 4-3-3, I think that if he was the left 8 with, Partey next to him and then a defensive midfielder behind them, I think that is perfect. I think that would be good. I think that I saw enough of Odegaard trying to play as an 8 that I kind of felt that I don't think that really fits his style. I think that when he is in midfield, his ability or his tendency to lose the ball and his dwelling on the ball doesn't work at that midfield. He needs to be in the final third. So if you're going to go with a 10, I think he's better in that role where, he can do those kinds of things and, you're less concerned about losing the ball further up the pitch. So I think it really does kind of down to what is the identity that we want to see.
100%.
And again, so I think this actually goes into Buendia. So I think Buendia is a little bit kind of a bit of both. He can be a midfielder if we needed to in a pinch, but I think he's another guy that I think would be absolutely great as that attacking midfielder. So we look at these numbers and they're really good. Part of that is that he was on a really good Norwich team in the championship. So there isn't any sort of league adjustment here. So this is just pure where it kind of ranks compared to, this would be the Big Five league. So this one doesn't have the pure group of the championship. But I think that, you can kind of imagine that there's a bit of a setback. But when I looked at how he did in the Premier League the year before, it was very similar kind of production. And he was a guy that I absolutely wanted to go get in last summer. He was a guy that I thought, instead of Willian, would really just kind of fit this team a lot better, really kind of go with what we wanted to be able to do. So he is a guy that I would absolutely love to see. I think he's a very good all-around player. Mm-hmm. Really kind of does a lot of the things that, we talked about where Arsenal are missing being able to operate out of. And Buendia really does occupy those spaces. And I think that he would be a person that would really be able to kind of slot into our team well. And I think it would be a good complement for the skill set that we already have in the team. So we've got, a good set of attacking midfielders. And then it really is just pick three against whatever you want to be able to kind of do against your opponents. And then you have options to change it off the bench. So to me, I want to see like 3,000 minutes from all of those guys. I don't want anybody playing, a ton of time, but I want them all guiding to get in that 2,700, 3,000 minutes, and really just going full on. Give me those young guys.
Yeah, when we talk about playmaker, goal scorer type of players, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about Buendia. And it's in a market where we're probably not going to be able to go out and get a Jack Grealish. This is probably the best that you can do, and this isn't bad at all. And what I like about Buendia that the other player, and like Awa doesn't offer and Odegaard doesn't offer either, is everything in this area here. The tackles.
So this is against attack. This is against attacking midfielders. So this isn't compared against. So Awar was against midfielder. So that is something where midfielders are going to do more of those things. So I think that Buendia does well in the sense that he's good defending from the front. And that's something that where he's played more in that role. So I think that's something that, if we're going to be a pressing team,
that we need.
If we're going to be a pressing team, it's very important.
And that's important too, is if we want to be a pressing team. We've seen this season that we've pressed sometimes and we haven't pressed other times. But if that is something that we wanted to do, I think you probably want Buendia there versus like Odegaard. I think Odegaard tries, but he doesn't necessarily have the mobility to do it. And Buendia is very, very aggressive. Now, sometimes his aggression gets him into trouble. I've never seen an offensive player get as many red cards as he gets. But at the same time, when you think about, somebody that leads his team, that doesn't really disappear, this is somebody that you would want. He showed up for his team. He's got them back up to the Premier League. He's struggled before. He's gotten relegated. So if you're looking from it, like from a standpoint of maybe more soft factors, he probably has a little bit more of that going for him than somebody like Awa, who's known to kind of drift in and out. If the team's playing well, he plays well. If they're not, then he doesn't. But I think Buendia does tick all the boxes. The only thing that I'm not really 100% sure about is the fact that he plays off of the right wing. And are we sure that he can play in a 10 role? Are we sure that he can play in the 8 role? Because I've never seen him play there, even though people have told me that he's played there when he was like a teenager. So go ahead.
So, I think you definitely look at where his heat map is. It's definitely in that right half space. So he might start from the right, but he definitely takes up the spaces that. So a lot of times that is very interesting is, everybody talks about the formations, but it really is about roles. I think more than anything, you look at where he actually does his work from, and it is definitely more in those central areas. So he may start from the right, but he operates with a kind of a free role to be able to cut in. And I think that's something that, depending on how Arsenal want to play, if we want to play with kind of like a 2 forward system where we have, a forward on the right and then, Aubameyang, who generally drifts into that left channel to be able to kind of play off of, either center back that, we're facing against. I think this is someone who could coordinate well with whoever we have on the right on that side. So if it's Saka, if it's Pepe, I think that they wouldn't necessarily always take those same spots, but I think that he could interchange as well and be able to play right. You go out to those right spots as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's key. It's also a key for Buendia as well that he has 2-footedness. That's something that we don't really see with our players. We have a lot of left-footed players. Yeah, he's 2-footed. So that would allow him to be able to overlap as well as come centrally, and it wouldn't be like what it is with Odegaard. So I think he has that in his locker, which is would be beneficial to us, So I do like Buendia. And I mean, if we brought in any of those players, I wouldn't be upset. It depends on what Arteta really wants. But I think there's some interesting conversations that could be had. And I want to know in the chat box, you guys let me know who you would want to see come in, because I think we all have different ideas. And I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. But before we get out of here, I want to give the chat box an opportunity to ask you a couple questions. Scott, is that cool?
That's cool.
All right, you guys. So we're in the Ask Scott section of the pod. So go ahead and put hashtag Ask Scott, and you can ask him whatever questions you want to ask him. But yeah, for you, Scott, who's your choice between Odegaard, Buendia, and Awa? Just in general.
That's always the tough one. So I mean, I think it always does come down to price. So if I think there was a bit of a gentleman's agreement for Buendia, where I think Arsenal did probably want him in January, but Norwich are like, let's get up to the Premier League. So I mean, it made a lot of sense for them to not sell him in January. So maybe that's something that if they have a bit of an agreement, say, all right, for 30 million, if that's his price, I think that's almost a no-brainer to be able to go get him. I think if it's Odegaard at 35 or less, I think that's something that you pull the trigger on, because I think that is really kind of the price range that Arsenal need to be shopping in. Someone who's just entering their prime years is something that we really need to be able to see. So I think that either of those at the right price would make me very happy. Especially if we're going to go with continue the 4-2-3-1. If we are going to switch to a 4-3-3, I think you do have to go for someone maybe who can operate on that left-hand side. And I think that's where you go with Awar. And then if we're going for someone who's in the 6, Anguissa for Fulham, I think is another really good option as a guy who could just go out there, be a pure destroyer. So if we're going to go with a 6, I think that's the guy probably. I think that'd probably be a decent price. That's something that Liverpool have been able to really kind of excel at, is, being able to go pick the best player from a relegated team to be able to kind of get a kind of a deal, a below market rate kind of thing. So I think if that's what we're looking for. But the thing with Bissouma that I like is I think he could play as a 6. I think he could play as a double pivot as well. So I think that's my first choice if we're going to go for a midfielder, because I think we do need that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
So we got some questions here coming in.
There are questions. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. MS says, who would be your choice to buy as right back?
Man, I mean, if I could kind of pick anybody, I might go for Hakimi from Inter. I mean, to me, he just absolutely would probably kind of be a match for what Tierney does. He's almost more of a wing back and not a true fullback. But yeah, he's actually almost even plays as an attacking midfielder. But that would be kind of like the dream situation. Especially if we're going to go with almost a 4-3-3, so where you can cover a little bit more for a wide guy who's just bombing down the field. I think Max Aarons would be a good, safe choice. I would probably be okay with Callum Chambers. I don't think that if we're really going to kind of use our money otherwhere, I think that maybe, yeah, you'd be okay with Callum Chambers. And if we had to go with Callum Chambers and Cedric, I wouldn't be, I guess, devastated. Especially if that meant that we could use that money other places on the pitch to get better. I think that this would be okay. I think Callum Chambers is an average-ish right back, and he would be okay. So that's kind of, the way I guess to see.
Wow. I mean, if we went through that transfer window and sold Hector Bellerin and ended up keeping Callum Chambers and Cedric, there's a certain section of nobody would love it, but yeah, be having a fit, but
I guess it depends on what you did everywhere else on the pitch. So if we are able to really kind of hit some home runs, and because I mean, I think money's going to be tight. I think it's going to be a really hard selling summer, and I don't think we're going to get great prices for the players that we want to sell, especially for the non-English players that we want to offload. I think a lot of our players are on really high wages that really teams outside of the Premier League are not going to be able to afford. So I think it's going to be tough to really kind of see some of those players leave our books.
You heard it here first. It's going to be a rough summer, you guys. We're not going to be selling $100-something million worth of players. Be lucky if we sold like 40. So quick thanks. All thoughts says, what do the analytics think of Aubameyang? I'm very afraid. Should I be?
I mean, I think a lot of the things that have really kind of tinted the way that we've seen him is that beginning part of the year where he was absolutely atrocious. When I looked at the numbers since he really switched back into being the center forward. His numbers bounced back quite a bit, not quite to the levels that we're paying him at. And I think that we will always think that this was an overpay for what we're doing. But I think he's been back at that, half an expected goal, a 90, which is good, not elite, but definitely still good. I think that you've seen him kind of get back into getting more into this positions. It's been, I guess, hard a little bit too, as he's recovering from malaria. And I think that you could definitely see that he doesn't have the same kind of explosiveness and the same step that he had at the beginning of the year. So I'm hopeful that that's something that comes back, but there's still a lot of question marks. So it's probably never going to be the level that we expected it to be. I don't think that hot finishing that really kind of papered over some of the decline is ever coming back. So I think that we kind of have to have the expectation that he's going to be maybe a good striker, but not an elite striker anymore.
Yeah, I think it's most important to just make sure that we have other people scoring goals. We can't just rest everything on Aubameyang and just, everybody else has to kind of step up from here on out. This is a good question from Yo-Yo. Your player of the season at the club, biggest disappointment and most improved player.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think so. The player of the season, I want to say Saka, because he has just been asked to do everything, and basically everywhere that he's been asked to play, he has played well. How many positions has he played this year? He's played left back, he's played right back, he's played left midfield as an 8, he's played left attacking midfield, he's played right attacking midfield, he's been a bit of a 10. So he has shown the ability to play all over the pitch, and he's a guy that just looks good wherever he plays. So I think he's definitely been the player of the season for me. The disappointment, I think Willian, just overall, it has just been, I didn't have high expectations for it. I absolutely hated the deal, but I thought that the first season would at least be good. I think one of the big selling points of him was that he is a guy that wouldn't need to have any sort of adjustment period. He's been in the Premier League. He knows everything about it, and he'd be able to hit the ground running. And that was definitely a win now kind of move, that he was a guy that was supposed to get us into the top 4 to do those kinds of things. And just that has been a major disappointment. You looked at his numbers across the board, and everything is down 30 to 50%. And it's just, I didn't have great expectations for year 2 and 3, but I definitely thought that year 1 would be a lot better. And then most improved, I think Smith Rowe, he's been amazing. Just a revelation. That's probably the word that I want to say. I thought that at Huddersfield, he was good, and he was a guy that I had big hopes that he'd be able to kind of step in and be able to do it. But I don't think that I really thought that what he's being able to do right now was what I would be able to expect from him. I think that he's become basically a first name on the team sheet kind of guy. So I think that's been something that's been absolutely amazing. I love Smith Rowe, just his ability to just run. I think there was a situation in the Brighton game yesterday where there was a couple times where he would get the ball, he did a pass back, and then he did that little turn and run to go behind. And again, nobody passes forward on Arsenal, so that didn't go. But he did it twice in a row. And it's just his ability and his first instinct to go run behind is something that I just absolutely love about him.
Yeah, he's an instinctual type of player, and I don't think we have a lot of those. I think we have a lot of players that, I don't know if they've been overcoached or whatever, but it just seems especially Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe still have that little bit of just free-flowing aspect to them. And I love Smith-Rowe too, and I think he's going to get better and better. And his physical build, I think if he gets in the gym, he's going to be a problem. He's going to be a serious problem. And if we can keep him fit, but I can agree with that. Saka, Willian, and Emil Smith-Rowe. So yeah. But let's leave it there. I think that was a good hour and 15 minutes talking the numbers, and I hope you guys have enjoyed Scott, getting to know Scott. If you guys don't listen to Arsenal Vision, you should. He's on there, talking stats, talking numbers. And everything that he has on Twitter is also awesome. So make sure that you follow him at _crab.
That crab, yeah.
Say it again for me, because I messed it up.
_crab. Yeah, I should have picked something that was simpler and easier to say, because I know Elliot always has the trouble with it too, but I'm stuck with it now. It's too late.
Yeah. I love it. So, all right, Scott, I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody follow Scott, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, Scott. All right, you guys, that's going to be it for the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. At 8 p.m. UK time, I'm going to be on with Kelly, Harry, and George. We're going to finish up our big transfer show for our squad building part 2, how to fix Arsenal, all those great things. So make sure that you guys come back and visit us then. I will talk to you guys soon. And yeah, bye, guys.